Taking out all the politics and the partisan issues, when Joe Rogan interviewed Donald Trump and record-breaking viewership came his way, everything changed. In the last 24 hours, we believe that Joe Rogan on YouTube alone has amassed more than 30 million views. Add in Spotify and you begin to wonder exactly how much longer the legacy dinosaur news media can possibly hang on. A new era is dawning. Welcome to the American Podcast. Hello, folks. Howdy. How are you? Happy Sunday to everybody out there. We are overjoyed to have the opportunity once again to join in with you, share our day with you, share our time. It is a responsibility we take very seriously here, always wanting to add value to your every single day. Today, we're talking about what's going on with the legacy dinosaur news media, and perhaps Joe Rogan has finally defeated it. After decades, folks, it's a paradigm shift. Goodbye, legacy coastal elites. Hello, American podcasters. Joining us to talk about it, Lauren Connor, LW Ghost, and Hangry. He's just hangry. And folks, we're gonna get real angry. No, we won't. We kid. If you don't click that like button, we promise you're just welcome here no matter what. But guys, something big happened over the weekend, something huge. And no matter what your thoughts on politics, no matter who you're going to vote for, and that's really not the focus of what we're going to be talking about today, this was a monumental shift in the way that media operates. What are we talking about? Well, Joe Rogan interviewed Donald Trump. And in doing so, he released not only on Spotify, but also on YouTube, the full 3 hours. It is a fantastic interview. I recommend every single person on the globe go watch it. And the reason I do that is because you will often hear things about people. There will be all kinds of statements made about them, determinations as to their mental capacities and acumens and proclivities. In a 3-hour conversation, all of that melts away. I wish every single one of our elected officials went through something like this. Currently, listed out publicly, Joe Rogan has 23 million views on the YouTube side of this. But remember that Spotify is the home of the Joe Rogan experience. So we can safely assume that there are many, many, many millions of views there as well. But that's not all. You see, something that we know because we're professional YouTubers here, everybody on this panel, we know that the public viewership in terms of what you can see for views lags significantly behind what the actual view numbers are for about the first 24 hours. So I would safely presume, I think, that this is actually in excess of 30 million views on YouTube alone. Now, where does that at? Let's go to the JRE Library real quick. I want to show you guys this. This is amazing. If we go to the JRE Library and we take a look at the biggest, most watched JRE episodes on YouTube alone, you can see that this is already, if it's top 30 million, and we believe it has, this is already in the top 10. Number 7 is where this would put this. It's behind some controversial figure, but also Elon Musk, Jordan Peterson, Neil deGrasse Tyson. And folks, the reason we say controversial figure is not because I want to impugn anyone, but because there are certain names, and if you say them in a YouTube video, well, goodbye algorithm. So we're smart here. We know how to do the dance. Here's the other thing I know as a professional YouTuber, and that is that I know how the curve in viewership works. So I know, for example, here, this is really inside baseball. I'm not even sure I should say this. You know, it's the sort of thing that you should have to pay for. But folks, I'm going to give it to you for free. In the first 2 hours of a YouTube video's life, 90% of those videos, you can take the number of views they receive in the first 2 hours, and then you can triple that, and you'll get an approximation of what it's going to do in the first 24 hours. And so you can actually take that out and scale it up however you'd like. So what I think you're going to see is, I think in the first day, the first 24 hours of this Joe Rogan video, I think you can actually triple it out. So if it's currently sitting at 30 million, and we think that's about where it would be, I'm telling you that over the next days, I think it'll top 90 million. It will easily become the biggest interview Joe Rogan has ever done. And not only that, guys, but it will become the biggest piece of news media in the cycle, and that's huge. We'll talk about that in just a moment. First, though, before we get into this, 67 million viewers total for the debate, right, that ABC did, and that was on every station on the planet, basically. We'll come to that in a moment. Before we do, though, gentlemen, you had a chance to watch some of this, I would presume. Some of you did. I know at least Mr. Ghost, you did. Your thoughts on moving the conversation, and it is a conversation, going into that format versus what we usually see in 8-minute segments on TV, or the debate that really confines the candidates. What did you think about this format? Do you think this is the future going forward?
Oh, there's no doubt, but it depends on the guest. As you might know, I'm sure everybody does, Kamala Harris had originally agreed to do one of these too. And then somehow, due to something called scheduling, she withdrew.
Lou, isn't it amazing that I have this at the ready?
Well,
and I do because, by the way, you sent this to me, so I don't want to be too. I don't want to be too braggadocious, but Kamala Harris is not going to do this, and I'm not here making a political statement. I'm just telling you, she's not going to do it anymore.
Look, you remember back in the Obama elections, there was this whole thing of which candidate would you be more favorable to sitting down with a beer with, and that's become a measure. I mean, we had people as non-beer drinking as Elizabeth Warren talking about, well, I'm going to have me a beer, like somehow they can instantly become the common man with some suds.
And you could redefine that, though, Lou. Who would you like to have a beer with? You can redefine that to be sort of a relatability scale, right?
It's not about issues and politics. It's about, is this person real? Is this person what I would call a mensch? Right. Is this person relatable as somebody that you would become friends with, maybe if you met them at work or in a bar or wherever? And this interview, I mean, for God's sakes, there's a man running for the biggest job in the universe that we know of. And they spent 20, 25 minutes talking about fighting and wrestling because they both have interest in it. And it has nothing to do with the border or the economy or not directly anyway. But it was great. And I don't have any interest in those things. And I stayed for that. I didn't fast forward.
But Lou, it gave us insight into both men. It gave us insight to what they value in the way that they were describing these fighters and who they liked and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and into the characters that they approve of and disapprove of.
I think the term is humanizing.
Yeah, well,
yes.
Especially since, and this is the other interesting part, the entire campaign of those against him has been to dehumanize him.
Okay,
has been to call him a Hitler. Or Stalin or whatever,
Hold there, because there's a really important. Hangry made a point here, and you're layering on it, and both of you are exactly right. I want to crystallize it because it's so important. When Hangry says that the Joe Rogan conversation here humanized Trump, and by the way, that's exactly what would happen if Harris appeared as well. It would humanize her. Here is what is so important about that. It's my thesis, and you all take a whack at this if you disagree. It's my thesis that the mainstream legacy news media, the dinosaur system, ABC, CBS, NBC, that what they essentially are in the business of doing is dehumanizing either for benefit or for loss, to either lift up or to impugn. And what I mean by it is that because you have these very constrained 8-minute conversations and then cut to commercial, you have these heavily catered questions that nobody really knows. Does the candidate already have the question and they're prepared to answer it, right? You don't even know if the people in the audience have been flown in. Like, all of it is synthetic. And so I think that the formatting of that is intended to ensure that you either dehumanize somebody in a way that makes them look like adult when they're not, or it's meant to deify them, right? So deify them by making it look like they're an absolute genius.
But it's made to do one more important thing, and that is to maintain the network format as the measure of legitimacy of journalism.
Yeah. Yes.
And what it does now is prove that that's old-fashioned.
Yes.
You see?
After 50 years or more, Lou.
We can say that this interview with Rogan was the moment because of the numbers. But the moments passed. We've had that debate with the fact-checking on one side, and we've had the 60 Minutes edit. We've had all of these examples of why and how those systems don't work anymore, made by the media themselves, and they keep beating that dead horse. And meanwhile, this guy who just talks to people like you would over a beer eats their lunch.
Right.
So we're talking about a major turning point that in reality has already happened in the consciousness of the American people.
Yes, and it's a new precedent, Lou. I think this is as big. I mean, I don't think it gets bigger in terms of the way that news will operate going forward, because I truly, honestly believe, when you brought up that Harris is no longer going to appear on the Joe Rogan Experience, I think that may actually end, and I'm not trying to be political, but I think it may end her campaign as being viable. Because
it says, what's she afraid of?
Test.
What is she afraid of?
A conversation. And that's what's glorious about it, is that we want conversations. We want to see who the real human is. We want the filters removed. And that's what this does. For better or worse, somebody can watch this and they can come to the conclusion that they absolutely hate the Orange Man and all of their fears and all of the negatives, that they're completely confirmed by this and validated. Or validated. Let's get our syllable right, Pro. But here's the deal. You might think the other way. And it's 3 hours of two guys talking. I want to go to Lauren on this. Lauren, it seems to me that this will disrupt, and that going forward into future election cycles, that it is extremely beneficial for the country and any country if their candidates do something like this. And I hope that there are a dozen podcasts that become so big that you do the circuit. You got to go hit every one of these podcasts and have a two-hour conversation. And that's how we vet these people, as opposed to these insane networks that are all part of some sort of technocratic oligarchy. This is the way to do it. I hope this becomes the norm. Lauren, what do you think?
I agree with you in part. I think that the advantage of this format is that it's long form. And that presents a lot of opportunities to make a mistake, to say something that maybe isn't so well thought out or isn't part of what you would normally try to restrict yourself to. And that gives you some insight into a candidate's thinking. I think that's important. However, it is still just a one-on-one. And I think in addition to this, you do need substantive debates. And I think a problem that we have is that there's been the Presidential Debate Commission, although recently that's not been involved in the recent debates, but they have become so structured and so rules heavy, except for the moderators, apparently. I would like to return to something where the candidates agree to a debate, they get on stage, and there's not necessarily a moderator. I think that they should each present their position, debate between themselves. There would need to be some formal rules about things like interrupting, but I'm not against that being an endurance contest as well.
You're calling, let me see if I understand this, Lauren. You're calling for a return to the Lincoln-Douglas debates, but this time at a scope and scale they could never have imagined, because it's going to be, we presume, online.
Precisely. It's actually the Lincoln-Douglas debates that I was going to bring up, because that shows you, one, what are the priorities of the candidates if they have to speak extemporaneously, off the cuff. How do they make points and counterpoints and refute the opposition's position? I think when you are restricted to 2 minutes to make your pitch and then a minute for response and then another minute for rebuttal, that doesn't serve anybody, particularly if you're cutting off people's mics and things like that. I would much rather that we had something that is more long form, which I think is the utility that something like the Joe Rogan Experience brings, because 3 hours is a long time. I began to watch this, and I think I made it an hour and 20 minutes, and then I had to actually do something else. But that's good, because you could get tuckered out. You could run out of steam.
Lauren came out at midnight on the dot Saturday morning. Okay, so as Friday was ending, Saturday began, Eastern time. I was wrapping up some work because I work late into Fridays so that I have most of my weekend off. And this dropped. And so I walked out of my studio into another room where there's a TV and had this on. It was 2 a.m. It was 2 a.m. before I said, I have to go to bed. But the reason that I was doing that is because I recognized this is historic. And there's stuff in there, Lauren and Hangry and Lou. There's stuff in there like it's amazing to me that just casually it comes up. Are you serious about getting rid of the income tax? Well, sure, why not? And then they go into a discussion about the 1800s and about how tariffs and income tax, how that functions. And nobody who listens to the mainstream media would have ever in their life thought that Donald Trump could go back and talk about the 1880s and the 1890s and the economic situation of that time and start quoting presidents from the 1800s. You are led to believe a completely different version of reality if you watch the news media regarding anything to do with this man. And perhaps everything that we watch in the news is totally and utterly synthetic in the legacy news.
And this is part of why I think the long format is very important, because let's say, for example, that Kamala did agree to appear on the Joe Rogan Experience, which I think would be a good thing. So far, what I have seen of her in the debates and the appearances that she has made is that she appears to be, or trying to be, very controlled by a script that she has been told to stick to, and failing that, to run out the clock. Could you imagine trying to do that over a 3-hour period? It would be entirely impossible. There's nowhere to hide in that kind of a format. And that's why I think it's valuable.
I had Valiant Renegade on. Hey, 1 second, Lou. Real quick. I had Valiant Renegade on. He called this. So 3 or 4 days ago, had Valiant Renegade online. I think that video has got something like 200,000 views now, where we talked about what a monumental shift this could be. And it is that shift, but he nailed it, had it right, because it is such a risk. If you put a candidate on for 3 hours, it's a huge risk. Lou, go ahead.
Well, first I was going to say, the question that gets asked and answered in these that never happens in the formal short interviews or the debate formats, those are all about, well, what would you do if? This is about why. He explained why. He told a story excuse me, about the Chinese wanting to build a huge factory in Mexico to make cars. He says a factory that literally was planned to be so big, it would duplicate the entire output of Detroit, all the brands combined. And I called him up and I said, great, go ahead, do it if you want to do it. But I will tariff those cars 2,000%, 3,000%. Because why? Not to compete on the grounds that we want to beat the Chinese, but to keep Americans working.
And because there's an unfair advantage there, because China does not
care if they make a profit.
Exactly. So they modify to their benefit, which you can't blame them for that, but they modify to their benefit the Chinese economy such that their cars dominate their country that has 1 billion people, and then they use those profits to then go into Mexico and build the giant factory.
Well, but the point is they stopped.
Yeah.
He wasn't making an ideological statement, we're going to beat you commies. He was making a practical businessman's economic statement saying, we're going to make it financially unviable for you to do that, period. And they believed it. Well, why matters? Why matters? And these other guys never tell you why. Why? Because we like socialism. Why? Because they're never going to say that. But the big thing to me that needs to be addressed, do you remember just a few weeks ago, we were doing videos about, this thing where the ABC moderators were ordered basically by ABC and by therefore Dana Walden and management at Disney, who is best buddies with Kamala, to only fact check him and not her and all the rest. And that if this came out, it would be Megyn Kelly was doing things about this would literally be the end of ABC News.
And folks, we just want to clarify, those were allegations.
Yeah.
Some of those allegations
have yet to be proven.
Lindsay Davis would talk about in a LA Times, I think, article where she said that they did practice, they did rehearse. So,
but my point is not about the specifics of the incident. My point is about how we all said how much the news is vital to the entire health of the entire ABC, NBC, CBS, whoever.
And Disney. It's vital to listen. These giant entertainment corporations own the news organizations. So all of this bleeds into
the news organizations, let's remember, they're only allowed a certain number of O&O stations. All the other stations across the country that are affiliates of ABC or NBC or whoever, they're being held there by the news operation. They're being held there not because, oh, you've got Cheers, I'll keep you, NBC. It's we've got your news organization. So WXYZ in Podunk can have, in effect, a proxy reporter in Taiwan or Greece or wherever. All of that goes away if the news part goes away. All of that financial house of cards that's based on it goes away. And the idea that it could go away based on some malfeasance we all were buying into. But what if it doesn't matter if they're honest or not? People are just plain bored with the format and don't think it serves their interest the way a 3-hour talk with Joe Rogan does.
Well, there's only so long you can go of manufacturing everything. Like the truth wins out. You know, an architect can tell you that an inverted roof will stop the water from pouring into the house. Eventually, you'll get tired of being wet. Hey, you had a point to make. What were you hopping in with?
Well, I was going to say that my fear. I've got a bit of a fear here, and you had previously mentioned
the guy did Fear Factor, right? Joe, who would ever thought that the guy who was in charge of Apprentice would sit down with the guy who was in charge of Fear Factor, and that would be the political moment of the first part of the century. I kid, Hangry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's a meme going around just for that, and I was about to quote that. But honestly,
I did not mean to do that.
That's okay. That's okay. So my fear here is that if you compare this to streaming, which was another area where basically you had this technology which disrupted the status quo. Now we're basically back to where we began before streaming even happened. You have to sign up for multiple services. You got ads all over the place. It's almost indistinguishable from cable. And so I see how disruptive stuff like Joe Rogan's podcast, this can be. I just worry what the reaction will be from the entrenched forces in trying to essentially bring it back down to earth, so to speak.
Well, okay.
Their Earth.
Yeah, their Earth. I would say that, okay, so if you were in the 1800s, if you were in the locomotion business, things were pretty swell. As soon as the automobile took off, then times were not going to be very good. We can make that more simple. Use the horse instead, right?
Right.
Things were pretty good even if you were doing the horse and buggy business back in the 1800s, to make this analogy much easier. And then as soon as the automobile took off, it was too late. The proverbial car was out of the garage. In this case, the car is out of the garage. Once Joe Rogan beat them, once he punched them in the nose with the biggest news event, and it's not on them, despite all their power, all their network infrastructure, all their corporate interests and funding, once he had the biggest viewership flat out period of the news cycle, it's over. It's left the garage. And now I hope, this is my hope, I hope that YouTube and Spotify become ubiquitous as the networks are, because just as people have access all across the country to the networks, I hope they have that to YouTube. And I hope that Joe Rogan is everywhere and everybody watches this. And now it is the de facto way that politicians have to go in order to get electability.
There's a problem 100%. There. Ooh. And that is that those platforms, YouTube, especially in my mind, they are the monopoly. and they are still restricting speech. And that means that you still have to rely on them to carry your content. Now, you're big enough that you can negotiate with somebody else and make them a big player, but we still have a censorship problem. And I worry that that is going to be the next big battle that needs to be fought. We should not be relying on these content platforms to be moderating the speech that's on their platforms, but doing so in an opaque way. I think there does need to be regulation to the point where if you are going to take down content for misinformation, for instance, then you need to be required by law to point out exactly what's in violation of your terms of service.
So Lauren, there's currently a discussion. I don't want to claim that this is actual news yet, because it's sort of in that fog of war stage where some of the stuff is not well known. So I'm going to be careful, and I'm just going to posit this as currently it's a theory. There's currently a theory that were the election to go in a particular direction, there might be a government effort to damage X, right, formerly known as Twitter, because it represents a threat to a particular political position and ideology. However, if the election goes in the way that it seems to be leaning now, and I'm not trying to make any kind of partisan claim there, it seems to me that X is going to remain the biggest news source, which I think it has been established now. It's the most used news app, right? So X, that's the way X is operating. So Lauren, one of the reasons that I feel better and more optimistic than I have in a long, long time is because I believe that so long as X is a free discourse platform, that it acts as a balance to that. It not only is it a place where Joe Rogan can go to, or any of these other personalities can go to, and they don't have to worry about being censored. And the candidates, by the way, can do that as well. But also it acts as a balance to the other platforms, because then if they jettison free speech, free discourse, and the open marketplace of ideas, then they are in direct economic competition with X, and they are majorly disadvantaged, and they can't afford that. So then this is kind of forcing them to keep that door open to what we all once upon a time really thought would happen with the internet, and that is the explosion of the public square. What do you think?
I would agree with you, but it is dangerous to rely on one. You remember what happened with Parler?
Listen, Elon's the richest man in the world. I totally agree with you. We need more. We need more Elons. We need more X's. I totally agree with you. Folks, when I say more X's, I'm not telling you to separate from your loved ones if you can so advocate with them. Continue if you can.
And Elon moved from California to where? All his exes now live in Texas.
That's right.
Oh,
Folks, tomorrow we're going to have a video where we're going to examine, because we're taking this seriously now. In that interview, it's not an interview, it's a conversation. See, I even have to get used to this.
Yeah.
They didn't have an interview. They had a human conversation. In that conversation, they talked about that it's a realistic possibility that they will get rid of the income tax completely and switch to a totally different system. And if one particular party wins across the board, okay, well, that's now feasible. So tomorrow we're going to have a video talking about what does that look like in entertainment. Lou, I hope you can join us for that. I'm going to have a corporate accountant join us.
I'll be there.
But my gosh, what a incredible thing to think about. What will happen in entertainment? What will happen with theme parks if you get rid of the income tax? What would happen?
Just remember that the most successful assortment of amusement parks, to take one example, in the world is where? In a state with no income tax.
Now, are you referring to Dolly Ollie Hollywood?
I'm talking about Florida.
Oh, yeah, the Sunshine State. Yeah,
and then there's Tennessee with Dolly. And coincidence? Maybe not. Certainly businesses need employees, and that's a reason to move. It's the reason I moved.
Well, Lou, we're going to be talking, Lou, about, and so I'll just go ahead and prepare you for this, folks. You want to be here tomorrow for that video. Lou, over the next little while, be thinking about if there's no income tax, but there are tariffs on international services and products, how is that going to affect where filming happens and how Hollywood functions? Folks, this is This is going to be a video to watch, and it's the kind of stuff that could be on the horizon that nobody else is going to be discussing yet. I hope. We may have given this away too early. Now, listen, the YouTubers are going to be racing to get this out there. The competitors are like, ooh, he's giving us an idea.
Pro, my friend, it's not paranoia if they really are all out to get you. I just want to remind you of that.
The
thing that people have to understand is how events can speed things along. Look at recent history. The whole move of working from home rather than going to an office every day was happening anyway. But COVID came along and bam, it accelerated by 1,000-fold. You were talking about locomotives versus horses. I want you to, anybody out there who's got a railroad museum in your town, and there are lots of them, go take a look at the inside of the cab of your standard steam engine. That was the Enterprise in its day. That's what a big, huge jump into the future that was. It was the Enterprise. So technology handled well can move mountains and faster than you think.
That's right.
And paradigms disappear.
You can help us move mountains with this video by clicking the like button, share, subscribe, click it, and stick it to those pesky algorithms. It is the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And gentlemen, I hope that our audience is going to check out the genre guys. All three of you are genre guys. In fact,
yes,
you're the main panel. And what the genre guys is it's a show, a long-running now show, I can say, where you guys examine excellent entertainment from the past and tell the folks out there why it's excellent. It's on the Pro Channel, on the member exclusive side of things for about 3 months, ad-free, and then it goes to that pod place where it resides forever, but it's ad-supported. Guys, what two movies have you just reviewed?
Let's talk about only one, because the other one, we realize that with the holidays coming and all of our various personal obligations, there are going to be weeks when we all can't get together. So we're going to keep that one as a surprise, and an ace in the hole, if you will. Although we did do the movie Ace in the Hole also. But the one that we did tonight, that'll be your next on the Pro Channel, is Falling Down, a movie about perilous times and the stresses of life and how people react to them for good or ill. With lots of great people and we found things in it that we'd forgotten it had. And that's always fun. What do you think, guys?
Very well timed and appropriate. By the way, folks, there has been some discussion. Some of you out there want us to do a live show on election night. I am not naturally inclined to do that because we're not a political channel. And yet many of you are saying you want a live stream where we talk about entertainment and the implications of how all this will impact entertainment. And so I'm open to the idea. Let us know in the comments down below, is that something you're interested in? And would you actually watch us over your favorite political channels? Because, there are people out there who do a wonderful job of all this, and we like to stay in our lane. But if this is something you want, let us know in the comments and we'll consider it. Folks, until the next time we have the honor and the joy of joining you, thank you for sharing your time. And in the meantime, until we meet again, keep learning, keep growing, and as ever, keep having fun.
Okay, these colors just seem to conflict with your natural tone.
Wilton, what are you doing?
Obviously, we're getting Jose ready to throw his name in the hat to be the next CEO of Disney.
That's ridiculous. He's not qualified for that kind of role.
Well, of course he is. He's a wonderful candidate for a corporate puppet.
What on earth is happening?
He's literally a foreign agent by all accounts. You think honoring boundaries is a thing? No! This is Disney! He's got diversity points, green skin, and a wig. And most importantly, he likes to destroy things and blow them up, whether they're from the past or from now. He shows no discrimination.
Okay, you know what? I really can't argue with any of that. So,
right?
You do have fun. I'm gonna go read thatparkplace.com and Watch WDW
Okay,
Pro.
bye. Okay, Jose, say magical experiences.
I already hate this.